for the next session of the FuturePrint Virtual Summit. And this is a very exciting one because we have something a little bit unusual, not being seen anywhere else. It's a brand new launch of a partnership between Mutoh and CGS Oris, which is really exciting. It really takes Mutoh from the wide format world into the opportunities in packaging. So it's quite unique and not being seen anywhere else. So I'm going to just ask Nick de Kock, who is the marketing manager of Mutoh, to explain who we have with us today and introduce the two gentlemen, Heiner and Stefan. Nick, with you.
Thanks a lot, Fraser, with pleasure. So at Mutoh, we're always looking for new opportunities and new horizons. And one of the nice partnerships we developed is with the company CGS. So today, I'm very pleased to introduce to you the sales director of CGS Oris, Mr. Heiner Müller, and my colleague Stefan Heintjens, who has been around for many years doing responsibility for product marketing and product application, which is all about today's conversation, and both gentlemen will explain you further details.
Thank you, Nick. That's fantastic. Heiner, really pleased to meet you. You've certainly been in the industry for quite a long time, and previous experience companies like Cytex, and you've been with CGS Publishing Technologies for quite a long time. And now, as Senior Sales Director for Packaging, it really gives us a lot of pleasure to have someone like yourself explain a little bit more about what is going on in the relationship between software, the inks, the applications, and the opportunities. So, Heiner, I'm going to pass it over to you to share your slides with us and do a very short presentation to explain a little more.
Thank you very much, Fraser, and actually, good morning, gentlemen. Let me share my screen with you. I have prepared just a few slides just to give you a little bit more background.
Fantastic.
So let's jump right in. What I would like to explain to you today is a new trend in packaging. And when I talk about trends in packaging, I'm going to talk about direct to substrate proofing. Why there's a necessity to do that, and what's the story behind all that. But before we jump in, let me just give you some very brief information about CGS Oris. CGS Oris was founded in Frankfurt in a town called Heinberg in '86, so it's pretty much 35 years old by now. First product being a design workstation, which was very successful actually in Germany and other parts of the world like Japan. We then eventually in the early 90s went into color management and have been there ever since. When I talk about color management, our core product is still until today is proofing, paper-based proofing. And since then, this has matured quite a bit. And today we're very much into workflow and color management for digital presses. We also have a substantial OEM business with the likes, for instance, of Canon or Nippon Screen with their TruePress digital printing machine. The other part is, and we've addressed this segment since around about 10 years, is proofing and prototyping for packaging. And we will see that this is much, much more complicated than when we're talking about proofing for commercial printing. Again, today people have, since quite a few years, come to grips with proofing for commercial applications. We do have specific ISO standards people are following, and typically all the presses are set up to follow that standard. It's a completely different ballgame, of course, when you think about packaging. Packaging is just a very generic name for a variety of different things. We do have various print processes like offset, like gravure, like flexo, and anyone who just walks through a supermarket will see that we're also talking about a huge amount of different substrates, ranging from anything flexible to folding carton, rigid packagings, even something like metal packaging when you think about cans and so forth. The big difference also is that you're not only talking about a proof which lies flat on the table. We're talking about the actual prototype, what I would like to refer to as a 3D proofs. So people want to see this very, very early in the design stage. How does a product look like? How does it feel? And that is part of the problem, that until today, there was a big, or there still is a big gap between a prototype, or what people also call a mock-up, the proof, and then the actual printing. And when you think about the cost for launching new products, this is very disappointing for somebody, for a brand owner who designs something, and then at the end of the day, the product, when it comes off the press, looks absolutely different. What makes things worse is that today you also have more and more, even on very straightforward packagings, you have a lot of finishing effects. This could be embossing, this could be spot varnishes, this could be foiling, for instance, and you find this more and more on any kind of packaging. And people, of course, want to see, even in the design stage, how does that feel? What's the tactile sensation when you touch such a product? So, when you think about proofing or prototyping for packaging, immediately when you think about it, there are quite a few prerequisites. Without the whole thing, it does not work. The first and foremost thing is color space. When you talk about commercial printing, you are typically talking about a 4-color process like cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. In packaging, this is completely different, because you will see a lot of spot colors, a lot of brand colors. And if you want to accurately reproduce them on a proofing system, of course, this proofing system needs to have a color space which covers this specific brand or spot colors. Then, of course, anything for flexible packaging, you will see that there's a lot of spot white or intricate white. So the system also not only must print color, it must also print white. Then, of course, as we said before, you want to have an accurate idea of how your product's going to look like. So consequently, this should be on the actual product substrate you're going to use later on press, or at least something which is similar to that. Your system is not a standalone. It needs to communicate or connect with the common tools used throughout the supply chain. This could be Adobe software, this could be something else, this could be a workflow system. And of course, to be accurate, the color needs to be consistent from the very moment where the first design comes off the computer to the final finished product. So we want consistency throughout the entire production chain. And of course, as said before, you also want to visualize finishing effects, spot varnishes, metallics, and so forth. So as of today, we have sold worldwide around about 500 systems based on an eco-solvent printer. These systems have been successfully installed in over 25 countries in the world. When we use standard original substrates, we're using currently a transfer film technology. So i.e. we're printing on a very thin membrane, which is then heat transferred to the original substrate. So I would probably think that is, so far, this is the most successful dedicated proofing system for packaging. So having said that, that we do have a transfer system in place, there is still a lot of applications in the market where users simply need to go directly onto the substrate. So no transfer film is possible there. One of the most important applications we see, Mutoh and CGS, we see is the area of shrink sleeves. Of course, you cannot transfer onto this one because shrink sleeve material is heat sensitive. And I will also show a little video just to explain the process a little bit further. There's also one specific about shrink sleeves is that people need to control the distortion of the artwork. The artwork is typically distorted in a computer program. Then if it's transferred onto the container later on, the container is typically something irregular. And this distortion needs to be checked on the proof or on the mock-up beforehand, whether it's accurate or not. And of course, this can only be done on the original substrate. Then when you think about, for instance, wine labels, uncoated labels, if you were to use a plastification, a transfer film onto that one, you would simply destroy the haptics of that label stock. So there also we need to go directly onto the material. The same goes to a certain extent for something like corrugated packaging or a kraft liner, which is used typically in secondary packagings. Then there are some specific applications, solid board like garment text, woven fabrics, which are also being printed upon, or something like plastic carrier bags. Last but not least, people are also looking for an alternative to UV, because typically UV printing inks, inkjet inks, have a very, very distinct, nasty smell. And the resolution is not very good, especially when you talk about food packaging. This is very often, even on a prototype, not permissive. So what in fact actually are resin inks? So resin inks make the whole system work because they allow you to print directly on a number of substrates. And I think Stefan will go much more into details, so I will just be very briefly on the process here. The current ink set we're using is an extended set, is CMYK, and we also have some light colors, light cyan and light magenta in. And of course, as I previously mentioned, we need to be able to print white. The color space is surprisingly large, and we can easily cover standards like ISO-coated or in America, gray code standards. The inks are non-toxic, and I think eventually you might even get food grade certification for the inks. Printing with the printer is very easy. The prints, when they come out of the printer, are instantly dry and can be further processed. The prints are typically cured with a warm air fan. And of course, this is very delicate, as mentioned earlier on. Shrink film media is heat sensitive, so there needs to be a trade-off of curing the print and not going too hot to affect the substrate as such. So let's have a look at the printer here. And again, I think Stefan will elaborate much more on the whole thing. Very, very quickly, the printer has a working width of 64 centimeters or 24 inch. It's a single pass, so we're printing all colors in one single pass. What I also would like to mention is that it has, as you can see here at the bottom of the printer, you have a motorized take-up device, which is very, very important. For one thing, you can do ultra short runs on it because it allows unattended operation. And it will also hold the media, which is very thin and very sensitive under tension, under constant tension. And again, it prints on a large variety of coated and uncoated media. Together with Mutoh, we have developed specific inks. We call it XG, extended gamut inks, to actually allow for covering brand and spot colors. So I have a little video here which will show you the shrink film process as such, just to give you an idea how the whole thing works. So here we see the 628 MP Mutoh value jet printing directly on this shrink film material, which actually is very delicate because the shrink films typically have a thickness of only about 40 microns. And as I said before, the take-up device will hold it under tension. Now, the prototype needs to be glued together. And we're offering also peripherals like this little device here, which allows you to accurately glue the sleeve together. Of course, it needs to have the exact dimensions of our container where you wouldn't want to sleeve the shrink film later on. Typically, the sleeve is either glued together or heat sealed using an impulse sealer. Now here we have our little sleeve, and we now then want to sleeve this around our container. In this case, it's a water bottle. You could either use a handgun. This is typically when people do not have too many to produce, or you can also use alternatively something like this, which is a professional steam sleever. So here we are, with our finished product. And of course, we have the opportunity to check our distortion, to check the colors, to have a one-off unit. So this is it for the moment from my side. Fraser, you want to take over?
Yeah, thanks very much. That was really interesting, actually. As I was watching that, I was thinking, from the point of view of the opportunities for printers who might be watching this, how easy is it to I mean, the technology looks very straightforward, very simple. It doesn't look like it's going to be a massive investment for any printer. Let's say you're a wide format printer and you're just, you have some customers who might be interested in doing short run testing, for example, that sort of thing. Do you see that as where the opportunity lies?
Well, to be quite honest, if you think about proofing for packaging, I think we also have the lowest cost per proof in the industry. So for anybody who's either a designer and is extensively designing for sleeves or label stock or things like this, it's a very, very interesting investment because there's also a very short ROI on the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm going to move to Stefan because I'm just conscious of time and things. So, Stefan, you're going to share with us a little bit. Just before you kick off, I hope I'm not asking too much of a tricky question. What is the investment for, let's say there's a printer looking at this now, thinking about buying machines, sees it as a great opportunity. What's the sort of investment we're talking about?
Well, it will depend on the market. So I think it's better that Heiner comments on that because the pricing for that specific market is set by company CGS. Okay,
just a rough guideline. What are we talking about roughly? In
terms of, I'd like to explain it normally like in a lease rate. So we're talking really, if somebody wants to invest in a full system, so the software, color management solution, the printer, training and everything, we're looking ballpark figure around about 500 euros per month.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's what I was looking for, Heiner. And I know no one likes getting that pressure of being asked about the price, but for our listeners and the people watching this, that's the key, isn't it? This is an amazing piece of technology. It's got fantastic application. Mutoh doing a great job of it's a partnership that works really well and offers opportunity. And they're going to want to know what's the outlay, what's the cost opportunity. Anyway, let's move to Stefan. Stefan, you're going to give us a short presentation, so give you a chance to explain a little bit more.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So I will also share a few slides.
Fantastic.
Okay. Off we go. So I will start off by coming back to where the challenge lay in this particular cooperation. As Heiner was explaining, the challenges around the media we want to print on, and we had to look together what kind of ink technology and ink chemistry would work. And on this slide you see them all together. On the top left we have the water-based inks, which are usually very attractive to work with. Unfortunately, in this particular case, first of all, water needs a lot of heat to dry out, so in combination with the delicate heat-sensitive media, it's a bit tricky. And on top of that, usually for non-porous media, you need some coating. And these coatings really are a challenge when they need to be bent or stretched or shrunk. So that, unfortunately, was not an option. And then traditional solvent inks, it's a bit the similar challenge. They have a very high affinity for PVC-like media. In the other cases, also, you need a kind of coating. And this is where, specifically for the stretching or the shrinking, there was an issue to go with typical solvent ink. And last but not least, of course, as Heiner said, for UV, you have a challenge with resolution, sometimes with smell, but also that the UV ink, there is no component which evaporates. So you create a rather thick plastic layer on top of the media, of which you want to keep the tactile feel and the structure. So also UV was really not an option. So basically we went for an evaporating ink with what we call multi-resins. And the resins, it's not a single resin ink because we want to print on so many different substrates. For each of one, a resin was selected and they are combined together in this ink. Then when we move to how this ink dries, the ink has a bit of a chameleon effect, meaning that on a typical raw media, it will act a bit as a solvent ink, which means you will heat from underneath with the incorporated heaters in the printer. The dilutant will evaporate and you have a dry ink layer on top of the media. It's basically the resins which make it stick to the substrate. And if you go to more rigid type substrates, then it will act a bit like a UV ink, meaning that it lies on top of the media, it connects to the media using the resins, and the part that would normally disturb the stretching and so will completely evaporate. Now, this brings us to the printer itself. You will have seen in what Heiner was showing that it's indeed a very compact machine, which will find its way possibly in a production hall, but equally so in an office environment. So if there is a designer that wants to do some testing, or if there is a mini production, both of it will work well, and the printer doesn't take up a lot of space. In the media handling, imagine in a production environment, indeed, you need the stretching and the roll-up. So there is a roll-up device which will take rolls up to 10 kilograms. But if people prefer to work sheet by sheet, there is also an automatic sheet-off mechanism included. Most of the attention has gone to the drying path because on one hand, the machine needed to be compact, but on the other hand, you need a lot of warmth, but not intensive warmth. So there is, for the compact machine, a relatively long drying path, which starts basically at the back because it slightly preheats the media that goes through. Then on the front side, there is contact heaters, a fixer and a dryer. And additionally, there is also an air blower, but all of it very mild warmth. So the substrate will never heat up above 50 degrees, which is the key to all of this. There is room for 8 ink types, basically. So 8 different process color, could even be a spot color. Today, CGS not yet using all of them, but of course it is an let's say future-proof design. So if other ideas come up or other process colors need to be added, extra ones can be fit. And last but not least, there is the media handling itself. We developed specific pressure rolls, which can even be lifted up, so disabled, depending on what kind of media goes through. In this case, the very thin heat film, 40 microns. So on one hand, you want to be gentle on the media, but on the other hand, you also need the precise movement. You don't want to destroy the corrugated cardboard, but equally so you want to correctly move the very thin films. That's it from my side. I will hand it back to Fraser.
Thank you very much, Stefan. That was really, really short, but actually really useful for us to get an understanding. I guess the opportunity is, not only with the printer, but as you say yourself, designers can put this into their office environment and just be testing out, trying things, proofing. That's a great opportunity. The kind of cost implication, the flexibility, it's simple to use. So it's a really good opportunity for someone to explore a new market, isn't it?
Yeah, the idea was to have low threshold that basically anyone that is attracted to this industry can really start to taste from it and then go further from there on.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things I was interested in, you mentioned, Heiner, you see potential at some point in the future for food grade production,
Interestingly enough, although we're primarily talking about mock-ups, so something which will not, be distributed in supermarkets or so, people are still looking to a certain extent for the ink to be food grade, which of course, when you talk about UV or so, it isn't. This could be, this could also, be of further interest for certain people.
Yeah, I just wonder whether there's a potential going forward where things are, a product is kind of wrapped there and branded, in the shop, if that makes sense.
This is not so much the application, but think about, when new products are being launched, typically, the purchasing manager in a supermarket will get a first sample. So we're talking about something like 500, 800 copies. And I do very well see an application there, apart from, color accurate contract proofing and prototyping.
Yeah, no, very good. Stefan, did you have anything you wanted to add to this? I mean, obviously from your point of view, it's an interesting partnership. What do you think?
Yeah, from the ink side, there is another interesting topic, and that's that the ink is okay. It has basically not food certification, but toy certification. Wow. So there is a European norm for that, 71.3 it is called, which is basically a test that is done where a printed object is exposed to human saliva, and there should be no heavy metals coming out. And for that, the ink is already classified. Right. So maybe it's a bit of a niche within a niche, but at least it gives a lot of possibilities for the ideas of people that will be exposed to the product. So we're looking forward to what will come from the market once we go ahead with it.
Yes, brilliant. And let me just ask finally, this is quite exciting that a company like Mutoh, working in partnership with another company who really knows their stuff. Is this the way forward, do you think, for technology in the print? And
I do think so. Yes, I do think so. And I actually, the amazing thing is that this is really about developing a win-win. The expertise of Mutoh has been long time developing piezo drop on demand inkjet system. We've been around, basically Mutoh even developed the market of EcoSolvent right at the beginning. So we have been pioneering this. And basically we see in many applications, the technology has become much more mature. However, if you go, like Heiner explained, to packaging, you need a lot of expertise from the other side. And the very exciting thing is here to really see the win-win. Because the system as such will be offered through CGS or is certified dealers. And we will also extend the win-win to local Mutoh distributors that will assist for installation, for service and support. And it's also about learning ourselves about new industries, because I always wondered if you look at how much times do you come in contact with packaging a day compared to sign. I think the decision is easy made that you come much more into contact with packaging. So we see nice opportunities. By the way, we've already installed the first systems in Japan, and we will now roll it out via CGS in Germany through Heiner and his team.
Fantastic.
Well, so far, Fraser, we also have an installation in Europe. Of course, we needed to do a better installation over here, and the results are very, very promising. People are very excited about this. In this case, it's actually a shrink film printer, and he's using the system day in, day out since several weeks by now. So the feedback from the customer is very, very exciting.
Brilliant.
But let me just very briefly touch on one thing Nick mentioned. If you look a little bit in the future, there was a word, I think Benny Landa once said that. He said anything which can become digital will become digital. And what we see at the moment is there's a massive increase in digital presses entering first and foremost the packaging market. When you think about, for instance, corrugated printing. Yep. And I do see for the intermediate future, I do see a very valuable combination between workflow and color management, and somebody who has a very, very high expertise in digital inkjet printing, because we may do the step from prototyping into actual production.
Yes, that's right. Well, the technology's there. That's the thing, isn't it? It's just about speed at the moment.
Yes.
But lots of other things, particularly in the current climate, that drive a need for more localized production and immediacy and all those things. So this all bodes well for the future for digital. So, gentlemen, I think that just about wraps it up. I'm very pleased that we've done this session, because it really is something brand new, really unique, and going to market now. And it's been a pleasure to have you talk about this at the Futureprint Virtual Summit. Because it just means that we're showing stuff that is brand new. So thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate it, and look forward to speaking to you again.